Life with Grandpa, what can be more fun? Living where there's love for everyone.
And what lesson did you learn from this accident, Davida?
That I shouldn't have been disobedient. I should have held your hand like you said.
That's right. And also you did.
Wowee, you really trust me, don't you, Jolly Horse? Yeah, right. Go get Lamb Chop. All right, Lamb Chop, Jolly Horse is ready.
Have you ever remembered something from when you were young that you can't quite place? Maybe the memory is just too fuzzy or incomplete to fully nail down. Maybe there are only elements of it that spring to your mind, or maybe it's something that lives clear as day in your mind's eye, but no one you speak to seems to remember it. You can always leverage the hive mind of the internet to reach out and see if any of the thousands of faceless users can help you on your search, especially if there are some pretty unusual elements to what you are looking for. It all started with a Reddit post made on the Tip of My Tongue subreddit, where users can post their memories of obscure or hard to find games, videos, music, and other things they can't quite place, and ask the community to help them find it. Much of the time it works surprisingly well. Since the subreddit has a total of over 2.5 million subscribers as of the time of writing, if you're able to provide enough detail and enough general information, the chances of at least one person knowing what you mean and managing to give you the answer is fairly high. That is, as long as the media existed in the first place. If you go to the subreddit and sort by top and all time, you will see some examples of just how effective it can be. Some great examples include people trying to spell out noises or beats phonetically, usually badly, and sometimes still getting the correct answer. Other times, users record themselves humming or singing half-remembered melodies and upload them, occasionally meeting with surprising success. Most of the time, however, a post will either be resolved relatively quickly and marked as solved, or will languish briefly and then die in a sea of suggestions that never quite answer the poster's question. And sometimes, the post itself is so intriguing that it can take on a life of its own. This is exactly what happened in the post we're looking at today, a question that sent many users down a rabbit hole a lot deeper than they first expected. A user by the name of NoNameGal999 made a post asking for help identifying a religious kids show that they remembered from when they were young. While this is a fairly regular occurrence on the subreddit and can be met by any amount of either people remembering the show or users suggesting other similar shows, this one had an added wrinkle to it. The title was Strange Low-Budget Religious Kids Show, possibly late 80s, early or mid 90s. Creepy religious kids show made by a cult I escaped from. They go on to acknowledge that the made by a cult I escaped from aspect made it sound a little odd, but they provide more information, not only on the show itself, but also their own story. Here is the post in full. I know the title sounds clickbaity, but I assure you every word of it is true and what I'm describing is real. I just know it is. Some background. The cult in question is called the Family International, or TFI. I grew up in Huntington Beach, which funnily enough is where the cult started. I was born into it, with my parents still remaining members to this day. Their start dates for the cult as of now being unknown. What I know for a fact, the show followed a sheep, possibly named something biblical, as they encountered problems. The show was in the style of Sesame Street with puppets and actors with small animated segments. Standard kids show affair, right? Well, the problems encountered dove into disturbing subject matter. One segment I recall had the sheep talking to a little boy who said he wanted to, quote, serve Jesus in all the ways he could, with the sheep saying the little boy should, quote, give his body to the church, with an animated Jesus standing next to what I recall being children wearing little clothing. The show, from what I remember, appeared to have been made in the 80s, judging by the camera quality, but I grew up in the 90s and saw these at only 4 years old, so that puts us at 1994 for my earliest recollection of it. Some of the kids within our group were born in the 80s, and they had seen these too, so that puts a possible start date as late as 1985 to 1989, but I could be wrong. The show came on VHS and we had hundreds stored away on church property. If these prove the existence of hundreds of episodes or just means there are multiple copies of the same episode is unknown. My theories. Information is likely scarce for two reasons. Either it's been scrubbed to save reputation, or was produced by the cult, with no release outside it, so obviously no documentation. I also believe that the actress who voiced the sheep was a gospel singer who sang in numerous videos for the cult dating back to the 70s, which also leads me to believe that it may have had musical segments. Children within the cult may have also been used for the production as well. I intend to update as new information is found, and I thank anyone who takes the time to read and help the search. Understandably, it was more than just the description of the show that drew the users in. The cult aspect gained a lot of attention and seemed to drive engagement. In the end, there were a total of 156 comments and responses, 760 upvotes, and some edits made by the user with added information. Before we look into possible suggestions by users and the extra information and updates provided, it might be worth explaining what exactly the Family International is, and why it remains a point of contention to the modern day.
The children do say they've never had any sexual experiences with adults or other children, but they become extremely agitated when we ask them about Moses David Berg's teachings on sex.
The cult that the user was referring to, the Family International, which is its current name, might be more familiar to some as the Children of God. In fact, it is the name of the founder of the cult, David Berg, that actually triggered the realization in some of the user responses about which specific cult the OP was referring to. In its original form, it was founded in 1968 and went by the name of Teens for Christ. Multiple name changes would follow throughout the intervening years and decades, being known as the Children of God, the most famous moniker, and then the Family of Love, before settling on the name they are still known by to this day, the Family International. David Berg, as founder and figurehead of the organization, directed the ideals of the group and its actions initially in person and laterally once he lived in semi-hiding via an extensive series of letters that he sent to members that became known as Mo letters. And it is safe to say that some of the ideas, behaviors, and methods that the group used were controversial, to say the least. One of the most famous views that David Berg and the group took was that sex was the purest expression of love and that it was something that was heavily prioritized and emphasized, especially when it came to his own appetite for it. His teachings meant that he would request the attentions of anyone within the group and receive them willingly and enthusiastically. This extended to the wives and partners of members. It is also alleged that there were rather unconventional suggestions about the age of consent and accusations of children being abused physically because of this. This aspect of the group, accusations which have held up in court in some cases, are some of the most unpleasant and not ones we will dwell on here. There is plenty of information available for any that want to look further into this. There are a number of celebrities and children of celebrities that grew up either directly within the cult or deeply associated with it. Actress Rose McGowan has spoken at length about her experiences growing up in this atmosphere. Joaquin Phoenix's family were also members. Former guitarist of Fleetwood Mac, Jeremy Spencer, left the band and joined the group. They were extremely distrustful of anyone outside of their collective, but recognized the merit in reaching out to and influencing people that were rich and powerful. This gave rise to one of the most famous activities that members of the cult engaged in, flirty fishing. David Berg, in one of his nearly 3,000 Mo letters, used the passage in the Gospel of Matthew where Jesus declared that he would make his disciples, quote, fishers of men, and applied his own twisted idea to it. He encouraged the women within his cult to be flirty fishers, to go out and, through either escorting adverts or simply picking them up, engage in sex with as many men as possible, preferably those who had money, power, and influence. This was a main focus of the group for around 13 years, and due to the fact that these women were expected to maintain accurate and exhaustive records of their encounters, sources estimate there were somewhere around 220,000 men who were fished in this manner. If some of these women became pregnant from the encounters, the children would be raised within the cult and known as Jesus babies. This emphasis on sexuality and promiscuity seemed to permeate everything that the group did, and as more people left or escaped over the years, the accusations and revelations against the group increased, intensified, and became better known. One person heavily associated with the group was named Ricky Rodriguez. Raised in the cult and revered as a sort of Christ or Messiah-like figure, he was born to Karen Zerby, the second wife of David Berg and the leader of the cult following his death. On January 7, 2005, he would record a video explaining the childhood sexual abuse that he suffered within the group, even as such an esteemed and lauded member, allegedly even at the hands of his own mother. He would meet with his former nanny and one of his alleged abusers, Angela M. Smith, and would take her life. He would then end his own life. The brutality of the killing and the extreme allegations in this video caused a ripple effect, where the often criticized and investigated group found itself even further under the microscope as more cases of confirmed abuse and misdeeds began to be made public. It's against this pretty disturbing background that the post is framed, and alongside the suggestions and questions for clarification, there was an overall sentiment that they were happy for the OP that she managed to escape the cult. Treasure Attic was initially one of the most suggested solutions for the OP, and one that was brought up frequently enough that they specifically addressed it in their second post, stating that while it shared some elements, it wasn't what they were thinking of. Treasure Attic refers in this case to a TV show that ran for 29 episodes and was made during the 1980s. The main star was Uncle Jim, played by an actor, alongside characters like his dog, Peepers, and other puppet cast members like Bunny Bigword. It featured singing and songs throughout, and while it matched some elements of the show that OP was describing, they confirmed it was not the right show in their second update.
Hello everybody, and welcome to the Love It Show. And we've got an exciting show for you today. And to start,
The Love It's was another suggestion made by users, and one that might hold a little more water than most. Most of the surviving posts about the show or clips of it refer to it being either funded or made by the Family International, the name that the Children of God group was going by at the time. At least one user claimed that it was a specific member of the cult named Peter that produced these, or that it was the TFI in the Philippines. The show featured admittedly creepy or odd-looking puppets, and was shown predominantly during the 1980s. Many of the clips claimed that this was the work of the Family International, and the surviving tapes were scrubbed or deleted when the group began to get investigated for its more egregious abuses. While it would seem at first glance like this would solve the OP's post very cleanly, puppets, creepy, produced by the same cult, they said that it actually wasn't the same. They responded to the much upvoted comment that suggested this by saying it was close but not correct. Peppermint Park, another suggestion, refers to a children's show that was released on VHS only in 1987 and 1988. Again, it heavily featured puppets as well as songs and some creepy overtures, whether international or not. The work of John Horton and Mark V. International, the eerie and uncanny appearance of the characters has resulted in this easily overlooked show becoming a source of inspiration for other aspiring animators, ones that were deliberately setting out to create unsettling and off-putting media. Again, this was another miss. The user, NoNameGal999, would add edits to their original and most popular post at various points with clarification and updates. A portion of the first edit was a response to one of the most frequent suggestions by users, the show Treasure Attic. The user confirmed that while there are some similarities, it wasn't what they were looking for. The second portion of this edit explained some of the context a little more. They said, quote, "I'm led to believe multiple shows were produced, and a production studio even being found tied to the cult could be the key to finding this. The more overt nature of it could have been why there's almost no mention of it." A second edit was made later stating the following, quote, "Edit 2. It's also likely that this was made by a different studio and just bought by the TFI. That would explain the differing from the other videos as well as the lack of info." A final edit would be made, quote, "Edit 3. So around 2 days ago I had attempted to contact an ex-member, asking if they recalled this too, and while they said that they didn't, they did state they recall similar shows with very disturbing material." NoNameGal999 had no post history prior to the initial post being made, and the search for this TV show seems to be the only thing that the user account was ever used for. She, presuming her to be female from her name, would cross-post to the cult subreddit with the same inquiry and linking to the TOMT post. This would be less widely seen, only getting 9 upvotes and 2 comments. However, both comments on this post would be fairly insightful. The first was a returning user from the original post, user Slevlife. Quote, "I commented on your other post. I don't believe you're describing something actually produced by TFI. Probably something produced by a different Christian group that your home decided was okay to show you as a kid. The second comment was by user CyberMyrmidon and provided one of the more popular suggestions to the OP. Quote, I am very certain that the show the OP is searching for is Lamb Chops Play Along. It was not made by the cult and later was removed from circulation for being too churchy, cult slang for being too mainstream. The second comment certainly seems to match the sort of description that OP had provided initially, and also matches the way that the cult was known to treat media, and indeed people from the outside world. If something was deemed to be inappropriate or not aligned with what the cult was doing or feeling, then it was immediately banned. Is it possible that this cartoon was the sort of thing that would have been initially seen as appropriate by those in charge of the cult and then later reviewed and outlawed? It would certainly explain the user's vague memories of it, if not the difficulty in finding it after the fact. The OP never responded to either of these comments directly.
Yeah, it's Lamb Chops, play along. Join the kids and play along. We got a lot of good stuff for you.
Lamb Chops Play Along was shown on PBS in the United States between 1992 and 1995, and was a series of half-hour shows centered around the adventures of Lamb Chop, a sheep puppet. Again, similarly to Treasure Attic, it has a human character interacting with the puppet cast, and again there are songs, activities, and a general feel-good, harmless vibe that would appeal to the intended preschool audience. However, as with the other suggestions, whether the animators and producers intended it or not, there are some definite uncanny and creepy vibes being given off throughout. It contained most of the elements that the OP had described, as well as the lamb that seemed to be missing from other suggestions. It featured songs throughout and always concluded with Lamb Chop singing "The Song That Doesn't End," alongside two characters called Hush Puppy and Charlie Horse, which annoyed the human character of Sherry. No Name Gal 999 would cross-post again to the Lost Media subreddit, this time getting 10 upvotes and 2 comments again. One user simply acknowledged that it was interesting, wished them luck in the search, and cautioned them about pursuing it too hard if the content and message were as off-putting as the OP described. They suggested that any copies, if they did exist, would likely be destroyed by the cult if they had indeed been made by them. User PJ420LL had a more enthusiastic response. Hold the f*** up, I know this exists too. I remember a gif of the sheep trotting or rolling down a green hill circulating around Tumblr around 2015 to 2017. I specifically remember people thinking the gif was funny because of a caption or something, but then someone reblogged it with saying that it was from a cult. People were absolutely shocked. I'm pretty sure someone detailed their experience in finding it on accident while watching old VHS tapes with their friend. I most likely reblogged it because I remember laughing at it too. I will try my best to see if I can find the post in my blog history, but just know that it'll take me a while to get back to you. If they ever found either the blog post or the original source, they never posted it to the subreddit or anywhere else that can be found. No Name Gal 999 would follow this post up with a second post to TOMT, again linking back to their first post. As with all the other posts and cross posts, there was a significant drop off in engagement and interaction. Whether this was a result of everyone that had any relevant suggestions or knowledge having already passed over their information, or simply that it slipped below the radar is hard to tell. The second TOMT post had 44 upvotes and 12 comments, including comments from the Automod and placeholder comments from the OP. The post read, quote, "A while back I made a post discussing a religious show made by the TFI featuring disturbing subjects and even downright evil implications. I went as far as contacting the church themselves and only got the very cryptic response of, 'I suggest you keep your mouth shut,' so I was off-put from searching due to fear and anxiety. I know firsthand what these people are capable of." What we know for a fact by this point is that it isn't Treasure Attic, despite being quite similar. The sheep puppet used on this was much more crude, almost like a hand puppet, and was always filmed in one location. Treasure Attic seems to have been filmed in multiple locations, so that rules it out. The tapes are, or were, church property, all came in the form of VHS, all were made within the church with crew being members of our branch. This post received a comment where one user made an additional suggestion, Pink Morning Cartoon. Pink Morning Cartoon was the name initially given to a fairly obscure piece of media, uploaded to YouTube and discussed in the Lost Media and Obscure Media subreddits. YouTuber Blame It On Jorge produced a video in September of 2020 exploring its origins and the most common programs or shows that users may be confusing it with. One of the best guesses, and as agreed by the Lost Media Wiki, is that this refers to TV8 Kids Fun Fest, a show that aired for 8 years starting from 1996 on WINJ-LP in Ohio. The relative difficulty in finding surviving footage from the show made it hard to know for certain the full content. A clip was uploaded on the 16th of April 2007 by Jankum Chick, which would become known as Pink Morning Cartoon. The same user would upload a slightly longer and marginally better quality version in 2009, stating that they had taped it on VHS and remembered it playing as early in the morning in the late 90s. After some research on the obscure media subreddit, the user would find out the true name of the show and get some hints as to why the quality was so poor and the animation rather clunky. It was largely produced by the station's owner, Rev Ella Flowers, and was intended to focus on religious lessons for kids. Contact would be made with one of Ella Flowers' relatives who would confirm that she had been the one creating these cartoons, and the mystery of the Pink Morning cartoon would be largely solved. However, it would not seem to be what the OP was referring to in this case. Further suggestions were provided by another user which linked a video which featured nearly half an hour of cartoon footage. If either of these were of any help to the OP, she never commented to say so. The top comment explained a possible reason for the declining number of responses and the lack of correct solutions. Quote, "If it was made by the church, it's unlikely anyone is going to know what it is unless they were also a part of that church." The only other real comment of substance stated that they had watched multiple Kitty Viddy and New Beat videos trying to see if there was anything that rang a bell, but never came up with anything more concrete than creepy vibes galore, but no lambs yet. It should be noted here that the lower number of comments received on this post is actually quite inflated. Firstly, the user commented with a single full stop, presumably to ensure they got notifications, although Reddit should have notified them automatically. Secondly, due to these posts being over 3 years old, there was a comment on each main post and even some responses to comments from the auto mod that the thread is locked due to OP inactivity. Add in the comment from the notifier bot on each post and we are well into the realms of single-digit actual comments from real users. A third and seemingly final follow-up post was made to the Tip of My Tongue subreddit by NoNameGal999. Aside from the hyperlinks back to the previous 2 posts, it said the following, quote, "In the time that has passed, I was messaged by YouTuber Blame It On Jorge who had expressed an interest in the search. Since then, I had actually suspended the search due to concerns over my safety since I saw firsthand what TFI will do. While no new leads have been found, I was able to narrow down the possible options. A production company that has been named as well as some people involved which I intend to contact/look into ASAP." This post has 14 replies, again including the OP's own placeholder comment, a later message from the automod locking the thread due to OP's account going inactive, and some other unrelated automated comments. One replier provided a YouTube playlist consisting of random segments from bizarre shows in the 80s and 90s, with many of them featuring puppets as described in the original post. Again, if any of these offered solutions were the answer to OP's mystery, they never publicly posted to confirm it. And as far as anyone can tell, there doesn't seem to have been anything else posted about the matter since, at least not by that user. There was always the possibility that the entire thing was a hoax or a piece of creative writing, although it wasn't an accusation that seems to have been made by any of the users, at least not in any surviving comments. The effort involved to make the posts, edits, follow-ups, and cross-posts with responses seems a little more than someone simply fabricating a story would usually do, but it is always a possibility that needs to be considered. The declining interest in the follow-up posts, where the low reply counts include the OP's own replies, automod comments, and updates to state the thread is locked due to inactivity, are either indication of people not being as invested as the first time it came up and users having no other solutions to offer, or simply the fact that if it was indeed an artifact created either by the cult or for them, the only people that would recall it would be other ex-cult members. Did the user get scared off by the cult, threatened into silence? Was the contact from a prominent mystery and lost media YouTuber enough to push them back into obscurity, not wanting any more interest in what they were asking? It's difficult to say for sure. But there you have it, the creepy kids show that was possibly made by a cult. It's hard to say for sure whether this truly existed or not, but there are some key points to consider. The Family International, or the Children of God, or whatever they were calling themselves at the time, have some very well publicized and well-known issues. They have some scandals, some serious allegations and cases against them. While the idea of them financing and producing a cartoon specifically for indoctrinating the children within their group might seem a little far-fetched at first glance, it's fair to say that it wouldn't even breach the top 10 odd things that they have done. And as we know from other cults, similar things have happened.